most employees want clarity and they want to know what success looks like for them in their role. So that is a major benefit working in the agile way of working, because it's creates so much clarity, so much transparency. We put up goals. What is success? What does success look like? So I feel people are very happy that they know what moves the needle for the company.
It's our jobs to tell better stories. And always remember, it's the risk takers that are rewarded.
People are sick and tired of being marketed to, and they're sick and tired of being sold. The single biggest story today in sales and marketing is how our customers are buying differently.
Hey, Sophie, and thank you so much for coming to the Growth Hub podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent. I will jump right into the actual topic and ask the first question. Many in-house marketers struggle with aligning their work with the rest of the organization, which usually leads to situations where marketing is done in silos. And this is something that you've seen happen in the past and found that following the Agile model was a solid way around it. So let's start with a basic one. What does it mean to follow an agile way of work, and how can marketing benefit from it?
So how I view an agile way of working in marketing, I got inspired by how tech and product organizations work. So for us, when we started in our marketing team, we had a Scrum Master that worked as a Scrum Master in the past. So he actually led us through the transformation, which was pretty nice, because then myself leading the group and the other teammates could lean back a little bit and trust the process and just follow him. So that was quite nice, actually, to have someone that worked in a tech team before that had this way of working. So for me, and I mean, the sprint way of working, or agile way of working, is inspired by product and tech teams, and we work in sprints. So I would define it like that. And I think the benefit is to streamline our efforts with the rest of the company. So I think you said marketing could appear as working in silos, but I think if the organization or the company you work for doesn't have a clear structure, all the teams will work in silos. So yeah, I think we will come back to that. But I think if you don't have a structure, way of working and goal setting process for your company, then all teams will start to work in more silos.
So actually, do you work in the Agile? Do you use the Agile model only in your marketing, or is it used in the entire company?
So we definitely use it in tech and product and marketing, and then sales work slightly differently. And I know HR and the finance team also approaching more agile way of working. So I would say it would definitely be beneficial if all teams could work in a more similar way, because I do think all departments could work agile.
I just want to drill down a little bit on that. So you use the Agile model in marketing, but you just mentioned also, product and whatnot. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Do you work together with product team in the Agile way? Is there overlap in how you work, or how have you structured it in your company?
Yes. So if I start from the top with the management team, we do have, we work with objectives and key results, so OKRs, and you could use OKRs in many different ways, but how we use it is first to plan of the year, so yearly plan and goals. So that would be focus areas. What should we focus about the coming 12 months? Often for us and for many other companies, it's about getting new customers. It's about building a strong company culture, and it's about customer success. So you get the broad initiatives that you want to focus on. And then key results could be, ARR from new customers, employee net promoter score, or other key results that you actually can measure if it was successful or not. So out of this yearly plan or this yearly objectives, we form quarterly objectives and key results. And then for the team, the marketing team, we look at what the company goals are when we do our quarterly planning. And that quarterly planning we use in our sprints. And we plan 60% of our time based on the quarterly planning. And it really drills down to day-to-day work in the end. And this way, I would say, most of the teams in the company works. And then, of course, it gets more complex because you need cross-functional teams working together in different projects and so on. And it is quite complicated. The bigger you get, the more complicated it gets. But I would still say that we're quite proud and have found a good structure in this agile way of working.
Excellent. We already got a little bit ahead of ourselves because we definitely want to also talk about the OKRs you guys are using as well. But I was curious about how you've organized that. Just for the context, before we move on, how big is actually your marketing team?
So we're about 10 people.
Oh, cool. That's a fairly big team. Do you wish it would be bigger?
You always look at this benchmark, and I think benchmark says that you should be about 10% in marketing. And you obviously need to look at what business you're in and so on. So I heard B2B SaaS companies be a lot less, and I heard B2B SaaS companies be quite a lot more. But I think it depends. If you have a machinery and you and if you're not able to onboard and have a clear role description for more marketeers, then you should maybe grow your team slower than faster. Because if you grow it really fast, then it will be tough to onboard and create clarity and transparency. So yeah, in these times of inflations, energy prices, war, I think tech companies these days should focus more on profitability rather than growth. So I think we can grow a little bit, but maybe not a lot.
Yeah, we're seeing a bit more conservative numbers and kind of objectives and targets. Yeah, in that area, for sure. Right. So you did mention that when you were moving towards the working in the Agile model, you had Scrum Master who was helping you guys out. So I was wondering, hopping into or changing the way of working can be a bit of a challenge, especially when people start considering using the Agile way of working. So, it doesn't happen, snapping your fingers. You can't run before you can work. So, in your view, what needs to happen before you hop into the Agile model? What kind of prerequisites are there?
So I would say that if the team is not open for change, that could change over time. But if it's a lot of things going on, and then you introduce a new way of working, then it could be overwhelming for people. So I think timing could be good to consider, and that people are actually open for a new way of working. The team needs to have good communication and be ready for it. Because if you onboarded a brand new team and they haven't worked in the company for very long, then you should maybe wait. But I think you should not wait too long either, because it is quite important. You will save time and you will get a lot of more structure. So maybe not wait too long, but find a good timing during the year where it is good to get started and start small. You don't need to be perfect at once. You need to eat the elephant in pieces. So maybe just start small and then iterate and get better.
Would you be able to kind of give some kind of example about small? Would you kind of, in practicality, how does it work?
So first off, you might want to have like a team meeting or a team workshop where you start to discuss it. So you have Agile way of working on the schedule, and you want everyone to feel included in this process as well. So you might like have a fika or a coffee where you discuss it with your team and everyone can chip in and give input. So you plant the seed in everyone's mind that this will happen. We have not defined everything yet, but we are going in this direction. That could be good, of course. And then you could start changing your meeting structure. So it depends what structure you have today, but if you want to work in a 2-week sprint, you might want to have a sprint kickoff on a Monday morning. So then you need to schedule your first sprint kickoff a Monday morning. And then you might want to end the sprint a Friday afternoon. So then you need to have 2 weeks later a sprint review and end of the sprint session 2 weeks later. And then you decide how many stand-ups you would want and schedule this as well. And I mean, you could use a Word document or pen and paper, but it is quite important to have some kind of documentation. We use monday.com, so we list all the initiatives, who's the owner, where do you need help, and so on. But having one person leading the meetings and start off with the meeting structure, and then people chip in what they will work with the 2 coming weeks. I think that could be a quite basic start.
Do you think that the 2 weeks is, because if you think about marketing, 2 weeks in marketing is quite short time. How do you feel? Is it too short, or because we have experienced that 4 weeks sprints actually are quite workable, but they do seem quite tight at times.
Yeah.
So how does 2 weeks, work?
Yeah, I totally understand your questions. And when it is Christmas time or vacation times during this, like the Swedish summer, then a lot of people taking a long break. Then we pause sprints or extend them so they are very long. They could be 2 months, during the summer. And during Christmas, it could be longer as well. But during the spring and the fall, for us, it's worked quite good with the 2-week cadence, because you will break up certain projects or certain initiatives or campaigns into many different pieces. But I mean, lead generation, we always look at what we need to bring in the coming quarter. So if we are behind, then 2 weeks is a quite good time to accelerate or to focus on low-hanging fruits to really make sure we are driving pipeline to sales.
So if I've understood correctly, you guys started about a year ago. So you've been working in this model for 1 year. Is that right?
Yeah, I think 1.5 probably.
Okay. Can you tell us how that process has went? What kind of challenges have you faced along the way? And, how do you look at it right now? How have you succeeded? What have you learned?
Good question. So I said start small and just have a meeting structure, map up what you will do the coming 2 weeks. So what I think been working good is to iterate. So we have this sprint retrospective every second week or every second sprint, sorry. And then we've been giving each other feedback. What should we stop doing? What should we continue to do? And what should we start do? So we have this, it's a PowerPoint slide deck where you fill in stop, start, and continue. So we evaluate ourselves. So we have actually together got better. So I would say that me as the manager, if I would give feedback all the time, it wouldn't be that efficient as coming together and give each other feedback how we want to work with this. So I think that retrospective, looking back and analyzing our ways of working has been very successful. And we had one project actually where we had the students from CBS coming in and listening into our sprints for one period of time. And what we got out there is, because we put points in tasks. So let's say you will have a webinar, then you allocate how much points that will take. So 1 point is 1 day, basically. And if you think about that process, like finding speaker, get people to sign up, maybe it could be, 2-3 days, 2-3 points. But then we saw that we had different ways of viewing this, because that could be very, fluffy in a way. Mm-hmm. How long does it actually take? So we set different points per person, depending on which people you were. So we kind of streamlined that and got better at putting up points, because in the end, if a sprint is 10 days, then you want to have 10 points. Mm-hmm. And we, looking at each sprint, we could see we were a bit different. So we got very structured in that to discuss, how long things should take and when is good enough and so on. So I think we have had some really fruitful discussions where we improved our ways of working.
So how long did that process actually take? Like I'm sure you're iterating as you go still, but kind of getting the points in place.
So I would say from starting working in sprints to actually feel like a little bit proud of it, I would say 6 months. And points was maybe like 2 months.
That's not so bad.
So it's a couple of sprints where you need to kind of get into it.
You mentioned earlier that you actually spend like 60% of your time in agile kind of sprint model. But what do you do with the rest of the 40?
That's a really good question, because that is all the ad hoc things that comes through. So we'll map that out as well. So every time you get the ad hoc task, then you add it to the sprint, but you put a tag on it that it's an ad hoc task that wasn't planned for in the quarterly planning session. It was something that came up, and I think marketeers can relate to this, because it is like, can you create this sales deck, or can you translate this, or whatever it could be that someone wants within the next hours. So it is a lot of ad hoc things, and there we need to also be better at reject and approve what we can work with and what actually moves the needle, because there are things that the company might not see that you do work with, let's say search engine optimization. It's really important for lead generation, but no one will see if you're optimizing an article for search engines. And that takes time. So it is a lot of tasks that is not really visible to the company, that is super important to focus on.
Does that point system actually help you to say no to certain things?
I would say we can see how fully booked we are. So I think, as I said, we plan 60% of our time. So if you have a 10-point sprint, then it would be 6 points. You would have flexibility to take on more. But that we already do, because there are things coming. As you like the sprint way of working, or the agile way of working, definitely helps us reject tasks, because we can easily go into the sprint and it's transparent for everyone to see what we are working on, and that we have not the capacity to take on more. And also, if I sit in the management team and I want to summarize the last month, what we were working on, it is super valuable for me as a manager to easily go to the sprint and see the goals, what our goals are, and I can see very detailed what everyone is working on. So I can answer questions quite easily, because often that was a problem before, because you cannot remember every single day and go back 2 weeks time, what did we do then? So it's very nice being a manager and having this structure where you can go back and forth in time and actually prove value.
That is a major benefit for sure. Absolutely. But if you think about your team, what are the kind of benefits for your team of the Agile model?
So I think most employees want clarity, and they want to know what success looks like for them in their role. So that is a major benefit working in the Agile way of working, because it's creates so much clarity, so much transparency. We put up goals. What is success? What does success look like? So I feel people are very happy that they know what moves the needle for the company and what is success and what should we focus on. So just get a lot of clarity is quite nice, because you want to know what moves the needle and what your manager expects from you. So it's very transparent.
Great. You obviously you've seen a lot of benefits, and like you've explained, it works for you guys. I was wondering if you've seen any downsides to the approach. If there's a marketing team out there listening to this, and they decide that, okay, we want to implement the Agile model, is there something that they should be aware of or take into consideration?
I think I said that it takes 6 months before you're proud of it. So it requires a lot of follow up and follow through for Scrum Master, for the team, for you as a manager. It's not something you can launch and then lean back and see it happens. It's like any transformation or change. You need to have a clear owner. You need to have someone that is following through and following up and communicates regularly. So you need to have some kind of plan going into it. If you are a very unstructured person and you know that yourself, maybe you should outsource this and take the most structured person in your team to help out with this. So I would say it's a bit up to your personality as well. Because it creates a lot of benefits, but some work needs to happen, and maybe it should be a person that you think could lead this work, that has a lot of trust in the team, that could lead it. It does not need to be the manager of the team. It could definitely be a Scrum Master or someone even more junior that is a very structured person.
That is such a good insight, because we tend to think that it's the manager who needs to kind of manage everything. But kind of delegating even that is always an option.
But as a manager, you want to build relationship and trust, and building this sprint methodology. It's a lot of follow up, and I mean. Then it's beneficial to have someone else in the team to do that, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. True that. All right. So we've been talking about the Agile model and OKRs quite briefly. So you use OKRs, which is objectives and key results. Why did you decide to go with OKRs?
So I think most B2B SaaS companies I heard of work with OKRs. So I think if you would go with any other model, then you might maybe need to think about that. So I think since there are loads of other companies to work with it, it's a lot of articles around it, how to use it, and you see in Google and other companies worked really successful with OKRs. So I don't think it was more thought through than that, to be honest. So I think that was the reason. But I think the OKRs could work really differently depending on which company you are in and how you implement it. I think I touched upon it a bit earlier that you need to have, I'm thinking about time horizon. So you have a vision as a company, and I think maybe a vision could be revisited a lot more often, because often you set the vision and then the vision is set for the next 5 to 10 years, but actually you could revisit the vision. But let's say that is a 3-year horizon, then, to make it simple. Then you might have a yearly plan, so and goals, and that could be, of course, then 1-year horizon. And then you have a quarterly plan and goals, and that would be 3 months horizon. And then you work with sprint, which is 2 weeks horizon. And then you have day-to-day task on me level. So then I think if you have a vision, you have a mission, you have a yearly plan, you have a quarterly plan, you have 2 weeks plan, and then you have tasks day to day, then you're steering your company in one direction. That is also quite nice, because otherwise you can have the most fantastic teams, but everyone is running in different directions. Then you might not move the needle for the company. So it is very important for all teams to actually focus on things that the rest of the organization benefits from. So that is good when it comes to objective and key responsibility to get that direction. But I think, there are different layers to it.
Did these things, using the Agile model and then using OKRs, did those 2 things come about at the same time, or did you start using the other framework earlier? How did that process work for you guys?
So I would say the OKRs and sprint methodology happened at the same time, roughly. And I said, 1.5 years ago, we started with this. But then I think the iteration is the most important thing, because it's changed so much. The OKR process changed and the sprint process changed. So you kind of see what works, and to get people to understand where you're heading as a company. It does. To answer your question, yes, they did. They did happen roughly at the same time.
That's quite a bit of that's quite a lot of change to happen at the same time. I'm wondering if that was, did that go smoothly? Did you have some kind of bumps along the way when you're trying to implement essentially 2 fairly big changes to the way you guys work and frameworks that you use?
So I would say on a company level, which means in the management team, where we set the first yearly OKRs and then the quarterly OKRs, that worked quite smooth. And then getting it out to the teams happened at different times. That has looked slightly different from team to team, because they might already had a process from before. But in my marketing team, we had more a regular way of working, where you have meetings where you discuss what you are focusing on and so on, but not this structured. So it was good timing for me to bring the same methodology to my team. But essentially, this is what we would want for the whole company, of course, that everyone worked more streamlined, worked less in silos and more in task forces that solve real problems. So I don't think it was that complicated. You had, as a member of the management team, it was very clear, and then bringing it out to the team, it's really up to you as a manager to plan how to discuss and implement it in the end. So if you don't have a too large team, then I don't think you need to overcomplicate and overthink. It's just communicate.
So what kind of feedback did you get from your team?
No, but everyone was quite excited, because this actually built up on their CV, because if they will go somewhere else in the future, to be able to say that they worked in an agile way is quite nice, because if I would bring a team member in, I would want that competence. So I think the team was quite proud that we learned a new thing together. And of course, it was quite detailed questions about point systems and how to map things and documentations, but overall a big proudness over our way of working.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I want to ask the same question I asked in relation to the Agile models. I want to ask this about your OKRs as well. What have you learned about setting OKRs during this year and a half that you've been using it so far? What are your biggest learnings?
Biggest learning is to keep it simple and to have an owner. If you have an owner, the owner steers the process and needs to be able to say to the rest in the meeting you're sitting in where you discuss it, like, we need to move on. Okay, good thought, but we will do like this. So have a clear owner that can, of course, take in input, but also, say like, hey guys, we need to be able to come forward now with a decision about certain things. So I think a clear owner, and to keep it simple. Like I've seen other companies, because I've been quite digging into this because it's interest of mine now, that it gets very complicated. I saw old colleagues' OKR framework recently, and it was so much documentation and so much text. And I mean, if you think about it, if your partner say to you like 3 things you will buy when you go to the grocery store, and the person says 1/4 thing, then you forget. You can have like 3 things in your head at the same time. So it needs to be crystal clear and super easy. And if you have like someone doing design, it would be great to have, like an image almost with as little text as possible. So you just understand the concept of it. And keep it simple, have an owner.
That's a good advice. So as for marketing perspective, what would you say that are the best benefits of using OKRs in marketing?
I mean, if the company decided to go with OKRs, it would be strange if you choose something else. So I would say the benefits is that you are actually streamlining with the rest of the company, that you are working in the same direction, that you are having the same focus areas that the rest of the company. And then, of course, in marketing, it could be things that you don't think of on a company level that is actually really important. So I think if you have the company objectives, then you can form a few other objectives that is specific to the marketing organization. So it doesn't, you can add some extra that is really important for you as a team. I would say that.
Obviously there are, the OKR framework, it's fairly structured, and if you read it, it's, understandable, but there's still, I suppose, leeway within it to decide how you, on what level you go about doing it. So there are companies who use, company level and then team level OKRs, and then there are companies who go all the way down to the individual level. I was wondering, what's your take on, in your opinion, your experience, how deep should you go on your OKRs, all the way to the individual level, or keep it more general?
I think as a start, as we talked about, like, keep it simple and start somewhere. And then it's good to start on a company level. And then the next quarter, you might drill it down to team level, and then some quarters away on me level. So I think for me, I would have that as my ambition, to have it drill down throughout the company, from company level, team level, me level. It's not like the CEO would go in to a person's profile and look at their objectives and key results and the tasks every day. It's more for the individuals. It's a structure. It's creates clarity and alignment among all layers. So it's not about micromanaging. It's more about creating clarity for teams, for individuals. So that would be my ambition.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, another side of the coin, any ill-planned OKRs. The path to OKRs is rife with it, and the more you read about the literature, you'll see that, companies struggle with these things, and I can say we struggle with it as well. I mean, we're using OKRs, and it's not always easy. So it can be, ill-planned OKRs can be a result of many things, but one of the reasons can be bad planning, and it can, lead to focusing on the wrong things or irrelevant things and not taking you forward to where you want to be. I'm curious to hear if you've been there.
Yeah, of course. I would say, to be honest, like I've been talking around with different managers about this topic, and ill-planned OKRs is very common, I would say. And I would say that goals in general are communicated too late. I mean, in the middle of the quarter, or it's not communicated at all, and it's not followed up on. It's so many problems around goal setting in general. So, I mean, that's a huge problem, because this is like efficiency, and this will drive growth in the end. So it's so important that the goal setting process works seamless. So I think companies needs to, or managers and leaders need to look themselves in the mirror and really get better at this, because this creates a lot of frustration among employees as well, that it's not clear and it's not achievable, it's not communicated, and then it's communicated, and then it's then you never hear about it again. So I think I heard this so many times about ill-planned goal setting processes in general. So I think, it's something I heard about for sure.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
We're not the only ones.
Yeah. It is actually, it's a challenging thing to set up that kind of OKRs that are really everyone feels entitled to and kind of buy in. But also understanding, what is a good level for the objective, because that can also vary. Should it be a very high level, or very inspiring, or very, down to earth and very concrete, or something like that? And then how you derive key results and other objectives from that. So I think that's also something that is, it's a balancing act, and I'm not sure. I mean, it takes a while to get there. Yeah, you live and learn. Yeah, I guess. Trial and error.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, like, just to be concrete there, I would say 1 to 5 objectives that are highly inspiring should be the goal here. And then the key results will measure if you've done it successfully or not. So I would say objectives should be inspiring for the whole organization and just gives you a direction where you're heading. And the key results could be more nitty-gritty if you're achieving what you're set up to.
And actually, that's really interesting. Okay, I'm gonna drill down to this word inspiring a little more. Why do you think the objective needs to be inspiring?
So I think it should be, concrete and simple as well. So it shouldn't be, fluff as well. So I can give you some example that I think is inspiring. So we have had create an awesome customer experience, and we could have had just focus on customers or something else. But awesome, say something to me. Like, it should be top class, and if a customer calls me, that is an experience for them. So I will give them the best interaction with me that I can possibly give them. So for me, it sets a direction. So if a customer calls me or emails me, I should be on top and answer it fast. And customers are the bread and butter to the company, and I mean that is the dearest we have. So for me, that sets that is inspiring, and it tells me how I should behave as well.
That's a really good example because I got goosebumps. So
Yeah.
Good.
So it's just about kind of wording, isn't it? I mean, the objective is to kind of give good customer service, but how you actually sell it internally is with like give awesome customer service experience, or customer experience, or whatever it was. So
and an experience, it's so many teams that is contributing to an experience. It's not just the individual salesperson that is the key account manager. It could also be the finance team sending invoices to that customers. How can we make that experience seamless for the customers? So it's more touch points than you actually think about.
absolutely. But that actually tells the story that you have to have the organizational level strategy and kind of all the positioning, everything kind of really lined up and in line.
If you have excellent customer experience and the finance team gets this on the table, they start to think of what kind of touch points do we have with the customers, and can we make it better?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I bet there are units and departments in companies that haven't had to think about that before. So, you know, things are just going smoothly as usual, but then all of a sudden, if you have to think about what is it about our work that can be awesome to the customer, that changes the way you're thinking about your work completely. If you haven't done that before, obviously.
Like if you think about like payroll, how does that contribute to customer experience? I have no idea, but you know, that's kind of how they have to think about it as well. Anyway, all right. But before we actually move on to the fast 5 questions, do you, Sophie, have any other golden nuggets to share with our viewers and listeners who are actually how they can improve their way of working?
So I'm pretty sure everyone that listening into this podcast is amazing marketeers and other people from other departments. I think marketeers and myself in general could be better to marketing ourselves internally. So we do so much great stuff. So maybe a challenge to everyone that is listening to think about how they can be better at doing marketing for themselves internally. It could be maybe being more visible in Slack channels and raise your hand during a presentation, or actually be the person having the presentation and just be more visible and like reinforce marketing internally.
Absolutely. I think we need to all be better at that.
And it's so often neglected.
Yeah. Okay, we are at the end of our time. So we only have our Fast 5 segment left. So this is very, very simple. We have 5 questions, and you just give us 5 answers, whatever comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What book or books are you currently reading?
So I read the book The Mom Test very recently, and it's about how you can interview people about your product or service or website or anything really. And it broadened my eyes a little bit, because I often ask like yes or no questions, like, is this fantastic? Yes or no? And then people want to be kind to you, so they say it's amazing. But actually want real feedback. So I think that was quite good to understand that you should ask very broad questions, and that people walk through the process, how they do things, so you can learn instead of asking very, nitty-gritty questions, yes or no questions. That was a book I read currently. And then, I mean, I read some really good books in the past. There is a American author called Brian Tracy. He has a lot of, personal development books. So I read like Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, and No Excuses. And I kind of like these books. And like Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle, it's more spiritual, and it was also quite good experience. So a lot of good books to read. But I have 2 little children at home, so it's not too much reading I'm listening to nowadays. But I hope I will get back to that.
That's completely understandable. A SaaS company you love and why?
Oh, it's a difficult question. I would say HubSpot, and that's mainly because of their content, and that's really, really inspiring. And then I've been using Marketo and Pardot as marketing automation tools mostly in the past, but HubSpot is the one that is most inspiring to me out of these ML tools.
What is your favorite place to read about growth?
So I am a huge fan of LinkedIn, so I scroll through that feed a lot, and I mean it's loads of articles there that links me to different places. But TechCrunch is an international site, or Breakit here in Sweden I follow. So different places, but LinkedIn is probably the hub where everything is gathered in a way.
What is the most important growth metric in your opinion?
I think ARR for SaaS companies, so annual recurring revenue, is the most important metric.
And even though you've given us a lot of advice already in this podcast, but one more time, what is your best piece of advice for fellow SaaS marketers?
Oh, it's good questions. I've been dedicating my vacations, when I have a big a couple of weeks during the summer, I've been dedicating that to reflections. So during the fall and spring, I just work, and I'm a doer then. But during vacations, that you actually are not doing, but actually reflect a lot, because that reflection will move the needle for you personally. And then I have a second tips as well that is more hands-on for marketeers, and that is Steal with Pride. So let's say you are putting up like a pricing and plans page on your website, or whatever you're doing. You could visit, the 10 most prominent SaaS websites, or you can even visit like a B2C website or whatever you get inspired of. So you don't need to invent the wheel over and over again. You can actually look externally how other companies have solved one particular problem and get inspired.
Great, fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And this is the time we have today. Sophie, we want to thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to join.
That's it. Thanks everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Let's keep the conversation going on Twitter at SaaS Growth Hub, or LinkedIn at the SaaS Growth Hub Podcast.
And if you don't want to miss the next episode, make sure you subscribe to the Growth Hub on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or right here on YouTube.